Okay, do you want to let him in? Okay, we'll give everyone a second to flood in. Great to not see some familiar faces and also not see some new faces. But thank you so much for joining us. I'm Paul Chandler. I'm the host of this fourth webinar that we're having on the Digital Traffic Orders project. And it is quite a momentous occasion for the project. Also, I have figured, oh no, not you again. Yeah, I get that a lot, mainly from my wife. I've also figured out how to turn off that annoying notification sound. So I'm no longer distracted by that, which is a win for us all, I do believe. So without further ado, let's go and have a look at our agenda, maybe even in glorious full screen. Thank you very much, whoever is running this slide deck, anonymous person. Um, the most important thing, I think, is to talk to you about the private beta, how that's going, how that's going to work, all of that great stuff. We've got a Mentimeter for you. John Cooper is going to talk you through that. Also, we can't see the whole of the screen because Gareth is hovering over some settings or something for some reason. We're going to hear about the data specification from John Harrod Booth, joining us today from a glamorous location that he may or may not reveal to us. We're going to have questions and answers. As John Cooper says in the chat, get your questions in. And then we're going to hear from John Cooper again at the end with some further information. But first of all, I wanted to do a little celebration of where we are on the project. So give me that next slide, please, boss. We don't do enough probably to celebrate these things. We do these digital projects. We do them in pretty compressed timescales. There's other things that we do in government and parts of this sector where the wheels can take a long while to turn and things be produced. We have done the new public GitHub. That was loads of work, but John Cooper worked with the guys internally to get that sorted out. Anyone who wants to join it could join now. We got rid of all the problems with the number of licenses and having to negotiate all that internally. So, shout out to us for doing that. We got the interface control documents out. So that's a whole bit of work behind that to get that out. Loads of people, not me, doing lots of hard work to get that stuff out. Another data specification, talking about internally what the future of that is and how often we're going to be updating that. So fantastic to get those documents out. Getting the TTF website up and running, the people that update it for us, getting the old YouTubes updated with our videos, this one and the technical webinar we did last week will be on the YouTube channel in the near future. Anyone who took part in user research, Lydia, our user research, has done great work. I'm trying to think what it was we discovered only recently that made us rethink some things. It was the whole nature of when authorities merge and how we thought ownership of traffic orders worked. And then when we did the research, we found out that basically that people were like, yeah, it doesn't really work like that. We just, take them off the books and rewrite them under the new council or whatever, stuff like that. When you go, oh, okay, it doesn't need to work quite how we thought, so doing that research is hugely valuable. So thanks to everyone who takes part in that. So I think that's enough from me rambling on. Oh no, not him again, indeed. Let's go over to Dr. Gareth Tilley now. He's going to tell us I don't know why he's so determined to take it off full screen, but maybe he'll share that with us as we hear from Gareth Tilley. Gareth, who are you, sir?
Hi everyone, my name's Gareth Tilley. I work for PA Consulting and I'm the Stakeholder Engagement Manager for the D-TRO private beta. I'm having trouble flicking between teams and getting off mute, so I had to go off full screen then. Explains that bit of technology. What I wanted to do was just talk about the timeline for private beta, our staged approach, and just kind of where we are and look ahead to the kind of processes we're going to be adopting during private beta as well. So this slide just outlines the timeline and the two-stage approach that we're seeking to adopt. So effectively, the first stage is onboarding to our integration environment, and that is a kind of sandbox, and that will enable publishers, so that's TRAs with their in-house solution and digital solution providers, as well as data consumers. That will enable them to test their APIs and test to kind of understand the service a bit better in a kind of non-live and test environment effectively. The second stage then is onboarding to the live production environment, and that will be the full Monty. That'll be the full service effectively for private beta. And in terms of the timeline, we're looking to provide access to the integration environment this week. So we're looking to issue the instructions imminently for that. And then we're looking for private beta service to commence week commencing the 30th of September. So it'll be a kind of 2.5 weeks or so of access to the integration environment, and then we'll be enabling access to the live service effectively. This whole process is a bit of a kind of toing and froing in terms of the onboarding, and that whole process will be managed by the customer service officers, and that's myself and John Cooper. So we'll be there to kind of do the validation and the authentication from DFT side during the process, and we'll be available if you've got any questions or anything you need from us as well during that process. Just a little bit more about the integration environment then. It is a clone of the production environment, and as I say, it will enable users to effectively test their APIs and applications and see the service before going fully live. It's our sandbox, and when you're using test data and you're kind of publishing data to the integration environment, you won't need to tie a D-TRO to a TRA. It's kind of key difference. It's very much, as I say, a test environment. And as I said earlier, we'll be looking to email the onboarding documentation. That should be going out tomorrow at the latest is our plan. And then in terms of stage 2, onboarding to the private beta environment, the full environment, as I say, we're looking at week commencing the 30th, and we'll be issuing the onboarding documentation and the URL associated with that then. It is a live environment. It will be real data, and it will require linking between a TRA and any D-TROs which are uploaded. It'll be the genuine proper D-TROs going in at that point. It'll be a similar onboarding process to what everyone would have already done for the integration environment, and it's managed through the Apogee portal, and again supported by myself and John. So in terms of the cohort, we've got approximately 30 TRAs have formally kind of signed up and returned consent forms or through the expression of interest process we've got. So thanks so much for that. There is more places if further TRAs on this call want to join the private beta, then please get in touch. We'd really welcome that. We've got approximately 6 DSPs signed up and I think around 5 data consumers. But as I say, if any other TRAs want to be involved, then please let us know. And then we're going to go to a Mentimeter now. One of the things for private beta was, the kind of key purpose for us, private beta is all about us testing the service before we go fully live to a public beta. And what we really need from you, people involved in this in the private beta, is feedback really, so we can improve the service, so we can make it really as honed and fit for purpose as possible before we go into public beta. So what we wanted to understand was during private beta, what the best way and the kind of best approach for the engagement was. We didn't want to assume. So John Cooper, over to you on the Mentimeter and the types of engagement that we'd be looking to do during private beta.
Thanks, Gareth. And I've just put the link to the Menti in the chat, and I will start it in a sec. I'm just going to post the code. If you go to the Menti app, this is the code that you would need to enter. You can go to menti.com by clicking on the link. I will also share the screen. Right, can everyone see this first screen? The question is, well, the link is at menti.com and use code 19862232.
John, no, John, no,
yes.
you're not displaying.
Okay. Now. Can you see it now?
Not appeared on mine yet, but it is trying to screen share.
Yeah, I've got a blank white screen. It did appear briefly, it seemed to, and then disappeared for some reason. I could try and share my screen, John.
Can you see it now?
Oh, yes, brilliant.
Okay, so the question is about what are your preferred engagement methods during private beta? The code again is 19862232 at menti.com, or go to use the Menti app and enter the same code. We'll leave it, get to a respectable number before we'll move on to the second question, which is more, first question is about the post and during private beta engagement. And our second question is about launch events that we plan to hold to mark the launch of private beta with the private beta participants. So it's you're welcome to fill the poll in, but it is aimed essentially at people who are already registered or have an intention of participating in private beta. So if you haven't let us know, but you are keen, then you can still fill it in. I'm going to move it on in about 10 seconds to the second question, but it is still just coming up. Let's see if we can get it up to 100 actually before we move on. We have been looking at obviously there's a lot of online ways and in-person ways of doing this, and we'd like to be as receptive to your tastes as possible. Okay, I'm going to move on to the next question because I think we've got it seems to have flattened out. So here we have questions relating to private beta kickoff sessions, and we are offering options relating to in-person seminars in London and Manchester and webinars. Does seem to be quite a preference here for webinars at this point. See if we can get up to a similar number that we had in the first question. Obviously, we aren't going to hold a in-person seminar if very few people can show an interest in making it. Okay, well, I'll leave it on that. I think we'll end this me talking about this for the moment. I presume I'm handing back to Paul.
Hello, thank you very much, John Cooper. Forgive me, I was neck deep in the chat there. This is the reason I don't always go into the chat when I'm doing a webinar. Well, it's my great privilege to hand over to your friend and mine, Dr. John Harrod Booth. Maybe he'll reveal to us whereabouts in the world he is.
Good afternoon, everybody. I'm not in the UK. I'm currently in Delft in the Netherlands, trying to do the good work of keeping us aligned with European standards. So I'm going to give you a brief update in terms of where we are with the data specification today. I'm not going to go into any great technical detail. Those of you who were on the technical webinar will have heard a lot of this before in slightly more detail. But this is just to provide an overview, really. So on Monday this week, we issued a slightly revised version of the data specification. So it's version 3.2.2. And you can call that a bug fix if you like. So there were various comments that came in. And we've going through the process of triaging all of those, looking at them and trying to ensure that we are being as consistent as possible. It's challenging. There's already been one comment raised on the GitHub subsequent to that, which is quite right and is a good process, and we will address that as fast as possible. But we are releasing this, the documentation set. That gets posted onto the GitHub resource, which I'll come back and mention a bit later on, which is freely and openly available to everybody once you sign up and get a GitHub account, which is freely available at no cost. There is likely to be a further update to the data specification occurring sometime later in private beta. Sorry for the slight vagueness in terms of timing, but it really depends on a number of different factors. One is that we are trying to take account of what is likely to be in the secondary legislation, and there's likely to be some more additional fields, but not much, that might come into the data specification. But we're trying to ensure that. But also, we would expect, as we move into private beta, that there will be feedback and comment. I can see some of the comments that are coming through in chat are of technical nature, and clearly we'll try to address those as we go along. So it's evolving in that respect. There's also a discussion, an ongoing discussion, to do with how we encode digital spatial data, and we're looking into that in a very significant way at the moment, and that may result in some changes to the data specification, or indeed extension of possible other formats. The other topic I was going to introduce today, I suppose, is a little bit tangential to that, but hopefully will be of wide interest, which is that on that GitHub resource, we've provided a first version. It really is a first version that's discussing standardized terms and definitions. Next slide, please, Gareth. So just in terms of the user feedback we're receiving, and also any other changes that we can foresee, they're all going into a tracker, and we're basically triaging them as to whether we deal with them now. So that means that they will have been included within the specification released on Monday, whether we do them within the next one later in private beta, or whether they result in no change. And so we're working our way through all of those, looking at the consequence, and that obviously affects not only the data specification, but the service itself. And we're trying to do that in a managed and proportionate way. Next slide, please. So on the topic of standardized terms and definitions, I've been involved in a number of DFT projects, alpha stage discovery, where the topic of standardized terms and definitions comes up quite regularly. And in general, people tend to say it would be a very good thing if there was more standardization in terms of the terms that appear in TROs. The current landscape, obviously, in terms of what appears through both the 1984 Act itself and also through the Traffic Signs Manual and General Directions, there are some definitions which are standardized in that respect, but actually when you analyze them, it's only about a third of the content that we find in of the definitions in the data model fall into that category, and the others have no strict definition. And so what we've done through the good offices of DFT, but also with a very helpful input from Steve Thompson, is that we've put together a spreadsheet which really encapsulates all of the concepts that the data model has within it. And you can see on the screen now we have a whole bunch of lists. These are different types of regulation, different types of vehicle, different types of vehicle usage, etc., etc. And that's all within the spreadsheet. And where we can associate legally recognized definitions against the term, we've done so. And Steve has done a great deal of that work, and he tries to identify where the source of that definition may come from. But it's really interesting to open up the debate of how to use these, what should be included in some of these lists and what shouldn't be. If there are obvious gaps in definitions, what those are, because DFT can then take that back into their mill and consider what to do about trying to close the gap on some of these things. Ultimately, from a technical viewpoint, you all, from the authority viewpoint, will be supplying digital TROs in the future into this central service, and coming from 175, 180 different authorities, and we do run the risk that the way you interpret some of the short terms that exist in the data model may be different, and therefore when it comes to the data consumers, the Googles, TomToms, Here's, Ordnance Survey and others consuming it on the far side, there may be some subtle differences between the interpretation of terms between different authorities. And so the idea of moving towards a more standardized understanding of what terms means seems a natural progression. At this point in time, DFT have no stated intention to try and mandate that. Because of the landscape, there is variation at the moment, but it's really to try and raise the awareness and raise the discussion and to try to take that whole discussion forward. So you can find out more information on this on the GitHub resource. It appears under issue 6, and so those who can then navigate to the GitHub will be able to find that, and we invite you to comment on that issue in that channel on the GitHub. Obviously, it's not terribly helpful, and tools like Excel are not very useful in terms of being able to track changes. So we're not inviting you to take away a copy of the spreadsheet, make 1,000 edits on it, and then send it back to us, because if we get more than a couple of those, we won't be able to process them sensibly. So we really need to try and deal with that in a regularized fashion. So we're going to ask you to say, if you do have specific comments, please list those in long form, in a Word type form, and we'll try to work through and process that. And what we would hope to do, therefore, is evolve this spreadsheet over time with your good collaboration. Next slide, please. I've almost finished on that topic. Just to give you a flavour, so if you dive into that spreadsheet and you look at the vehicle types worksheet in there, you can see in column D a bunch of different vehicle types, any vehicle, car, goods vehicle, and then in column E you can see a definition, and indeed in column F you can see where that definition may have come from. The ones that are in bold in D exist in the model as it stands at the moment. Steve Thompson, applying his good practical knowledge of TROs, has said, well, maybe there should be a bunch of other things in there, and it would be really interesting to get your feedback and views as to whether that's right, whether there are things that are currently in the list that shouldn't be in the list, or whether there are other things that should be in the list, and that will be a very, very useful process. There's no particular timescale associated with this. This is likely to be an ongoing piece of work over time, but it will be really, really helpful to get input in that. And both a document that describes the spreadsheet and the spreadsheet itself are downloadable from the GitHub resource. And I think that's me. So back to Paul.
Not to go behind the magician's curtain, but my son's just returned from school soaking wet, and I was just dealing with a clothing situation whilst we were doing that. Right, okay. The Q&A. Wow. Okay. I've been working the chat like a politician in a room, trying to get answers out to people and shake some hands. But let's see how we get on. Now, get ready, guys. This one's a bit of a monster. I'm going to try and edit it as I read it. No response to our questions around ownership of data, data update protocols, multi-site temporary orders, expiry removal, retrospective and real-time emergency orders, selling on of the data, inaccurate data, etc., etc. And then we get into no funding for local authorities who don't get any benefit from doing this. And then we get into the forced approach to utilize specific suppliers. So there's a lot to take in there, I appreciate. Now, no funding for local authorities is sort of presented there as a statement, but we don't know that that's the case. We do need to do that. The name of it is leaving my head, John Cooper. What's the word? New burdens. Thank you very much, John Cooper. We do need to do that new burdens assessment. We'll support our policy colleagues on that. So that's not settled yet. You know, we don't know what the funding situation is. So I think that one is probably in the FAQs. I can see that John Cooper wants to come in here. John.
Yeah, just new burdens is not us. There's a new burdens team somewhere in the government that will look at this once it's been formalised, I believe, through the regulations. We're slightly undecided on that because none of us have ever encountered that process before, but that is how it will come through. Yeah, and that is answered in the FAQ, I believe.
Selling on of the data. I mean, what we'll have is T's and C's for people to sign up to, you know, when they join the project formally, and that will talk about that kind of stuff, I would have thought. I mean, we'll be doing this unless we hear otherwise from our directors and above and our politicians as open data. So, you know, that's the whole point, that people can take this stuff as open data and do exciting things with it. You know, that's kind of one of the principles of government. Forced approach to utilize specific suppliers. I don't think that's fair, because we've got people that we're working with that are intending to do things their own way. So we're working with local authorities that are planning to, or traffic authorities, I should say, that are planning to, you know, do their own thing here without a supplier, and we're completely agnostic on that. You know, and then we've got plenty of people that are equally like, oh, we already have a supplier, we're going to work with them, that's all fine, you know, we don't need to be part of private beta, we'll just, you know, go with the flow. All these things are fine with us, you know. I don't know if you want to come in on any of that, John Cooper, at all.
Yeah, I mean, it's worth saying we have been looking at the whether there's how much enthusiasm there is for, say, the web feature services option. We put that was in our recent survey which came out, which we should also put the link to in the chat, because that was trying to work out how many TRAs that purport to do TROs digitally already publish their data, and in what formats do they publish and where do they publish it. WFS is a common format, it seems, for publishing data. But in that instance, the D-TRO service would need to go to those sites and scrape the data off, whereas the single approach at the moment with D-TRO is that we have the specification, and TRAs and DSPs publish that data to the D-TRO service. We are open, but not in this MVP, to possible changes to the direction of the system if there is enough demand for it. That's the key point, because we aren't going to do a load of development work if the overall sector of the market is too small. It's disproportionate. So we have to be careful what we commit to in terms of changing our direction. We are thinking about the possibilities that could exist further down the line. I'm talking in public beta phase during next year and beyond, where it could be possible that the system and the service offers a wider range of import and even export formats and other details.
Thank you, John. I want to move on. Data update protocols is an interesting one. We were talking about that literally just yesterday. The idea that this data model will continue to evolve, how much back support that we do for earlier versions. Is it similar to Street Manager, where there's always 2 versions of the API on the go, or is it a bit different and we can sort of support earlier versions, but eventually when you try and support earlier versions, you start to trip yourself up and cause problems for yourself. So eventually you have to deprecate something somewhere. So yeah, we'll discuss that more over the next few weeks and try and come up with some more on that. But team, let's take that stuff away from Derek, consider them, and get back to him and any wider group in writing. Update the FAQs to consider some of that. Right, okay. Oh, crumbs. There's a couple of questions here from Peter, and I'm going to try and take them together a little bit. Did we ever get a view on all the other orders that affect the network and how they are going to be captured? TPCA closures, TSRGD orders, I do know what that is, bus stops, PED crossings, etc. Now, I'm going to say something here, and then John Harrod Booth, feel free to jump in. I think the idea is, do you know what? I'm just going to jump down to the bit here where I think it was Peter. Yeah. Find it surprising that on-street parking places are not included. With the limited list of sections included, the DFT are only seeking for a partial picture of the network. Yeah, okay. ATROs are not included either. So I think what we've got is what's going to be compulsory to supply, and then what will be optional to supply. And there's various boring reasons, and John Harrod Booth might be able to explain some of the legal machinations behind it possibly. But we want to capture above and beyond the minimum for sure, so you'll be able to supply stuff. And I'm sure that some of the software suppliers, or quite a few, will be like, oh, well, we have this information and we'd like to supply it to you, and you can have it. Either of the Johns, do you want to come in there?
So I come first and then hand off on more technical aspects to John. I think the question about whether on-street parking is in scope has come up before and is in the FAQ. Our view is that on-street parking is most definitely included in this. Off-street parking is another matter that isn't included, but on-street is. And there have been other questions about the interpretation of which sections of the Road Traffic Regulation Act are in and out, and these other quirkier things that don't rely on the Road Traffic Regulation Act. Are we capturing them or not? And I believe those items are also addressed in the FAQ, and I can't remember all the detail off the top of my head, but we have had some thought about these questions that have come up before on this and try to put our answers as clearly as possible in the FAQ. So I do commend those to you. That's mostly the TSRGD provisions that don't require TROs. Yes, we know about those and we know which ones they are even. And we do know that it would be good to capture those at some point, but obviously we don't have the legal mandate to do it, and they're not in the MVP of D-TRO, but we would very much like to capture them further down the line. I think we'd go even as far as to say that we've talked to the DSPs about whether or not they collect this information, and I believe there's some of it is collected. So we believe that at some point when we can turn to expansion, that we could collect at least start to collect some of that data. John.
Yeah, so I'm party to some visibility on what DFT is doing in terms of the preparation of the secondary legislation in respect of this. Obviously, the primary legislation, the Automated Vehicles Act, has passed through Parliament and has royal assent, and that is pointing at particular sections of the Road Traffic Act that are applicable. So the general approach at the moment in terms of what we're trying to do in the system is we clearly need to facilitate the ability as best we can to capture all of the mandatory parts, and wherever we are able to, we're also extending lists, although going back to the previous discussion, extending lists to cover other parts which may be optional in nature. And any input on any of those content areas is valuable to receive. So if you think you're looking through things and you say, I don't find an ability to provide information that I'm not required to supply, but I'd like to supply, please let us know and we will try and address that. Obviously, the secondary legislation discussion is in development. My understanding, and my DFT colleagues will be able to give a clearer view on this, is that sometime later in the year, I think there's an expectation that there will be a consultation on that secondary legislation, and therefore an open invitation to comment on that. And I guess at that point it will become clearer precisely the elements which are in and out of that scope of the mandatory obligation.
Thank you. Now, here's one for Gareth Tilley. My biggest question on private beta is how much involvement will be required or expected. Been given no budget for time spent, but if it's only small, that's fine. But if loads is involved, then I can't justify getting involved. Seems very reasonable to me. What are we asking of people, Doctor?
Thanks, Paul. Yeah, we're basically, as I said earlier, we're looking to get feedback on the service. So that will be including some of the guidance documentation we're going to be issuing and the service as a whole. And really, we're wanting to make people's, as easy as possible for people to provide that feedback to us, hence the Mentimeter we did. So we'll take the Mentimeter kind of results and reflect on that. But effectively, we're looking at kind of doing a kind of range of approaches to gather that feedback. So that might be further questionnaires, it might be one-to-one sessions, or just kind of joining a kind of wider engagement group. So it's really around what feedback you identify, and also kind of us helping everyone to give us that feedback as easily as possible. We don't have a set kind of a prescriptive, we'll be issuing kind of this set number of questionnaires, or there'll be these set number of meetings. What we'd like to do is just gather as much information as we can, and like I say, that'll be through a variety of user research techniques effectively. As a minimum, we'll have kind of questions around the onboarding process that people are going to go through, which I described earlier. And then there'll be certainly, kind of a level of feedback around the service itself as well. I appreciate that's not a kind of really clearly defined answer, but that gives you a flavour that we're wanting to be flexible and just kind of get the right range of tools to get the right level of feedback from as many people as possible.
No, thanks, Gareth. Right. Have you had any discussion with the Geospatial Commission yet regarding the non-GIS standard file format you are requesting, well-known text embedded within JSON? Yes, we did. I spoke to the Geospatial Commission at the start of August, and then when we all came back from leave in September, we had a longer conversation, which John Harrod Booth would be delighted to sum up for you in a more accurate way than I ever could.
Yes, certainly. So, yep, it's a live discussion. There are various tenets of HM government policy that place some constraints upon us. We are looking quite carefully at what the options are to try to address that. We're certainly open and sensitive to the question that there may be more suitable ways of doing this, and we're going to try to work our way through that, and that may well involve reaching out to both some of the digital service providers and also some of the local authorities. So I'd say watch this space. We are in a little bit of a conundrum in that obviously the timeline for the private beta go launch is not so very far away, and so we're to some degree trapped by the specification we have at the moment. But we are trying to resolve the broader question as rapidly as we can. So.
Thanks, John. Yeah, I would say that whatever solution we come up with is going to involve people sending stuff to us. As far as I'm concerned, we won't be like scraping services, gathering the information. So yeah, there's going to have to be some sort of sending somehow. This question of what is and isn't included seems to be coming up. I hope the FAQ answers that satisfactorily, but we might need to jazz up the FAQ a bit, John Cooper, just to be really clear, maybe up front, like what's in. Bob asks, is there an estimate of when the draft regulations will be published for consultation and when the requirement to publish D-TROs will come into force? I don't think, Bob, I can say here when the requirement will come into force. I don't think it's a secret now to say that we're not going to hit April. The election probably ended any chance of it being April 2025. So I think I can say later in 2025. That's me speaking, not the policy department. An estimate of when the stuff will be published. Yeah, I spoke to policy earlier, and they're working for before the end of the year. That's what they're working to. They can't guarantee that, but yeah, I'm hoping, and they're hoping to get it out on that sort of timescale. Couple of people struggling with GitHub. We need to help those guys out. Taxi ranks. I don't know if anyone wants to talk about taxi ranks. People talking about stuff that I don't understand about section 45s and on streets. Yeah, we will work on that, and hopefully John Harrod Booth covered some of that in his summary. You can tell I'm struggling a bit here. We have engaged with district councils actually, but probably not at the level that you're talking about with the off-street stuff. Yeah, that is a bit of a minefield being made at quite a low level, as you probably know. Don't forget about combined authorities. Oh, I'd be happy to learn more about that. Are there plans to collect restricted road information 30 mile an hour by virtue of street lighting? Oh, great comment, great comment. As these will not have any TROs behind them due to historic street lighting. Oh, what a great question, James. So here's me in my innocence thinking that we're going to build this national picture of speed limits. And then someone was like, well, you do realise that it's like 30 miles an hour by default by virtue of the street lighting. And I was like, oh no. And someone was like, oh, well, you do realise if it's national speed limit, there won't be a TRO for that either. Yeah, good question. Good question. Again, I think what we need to do is get the service up and running, get things kicked off, and then look at how we can kind of raise the quality of and the level of the information over time. So yeah, excellent comment there. Wayne, any issues at all, just email D-TRO at dft.gov.uk. Hopefully someone else has answered that question. Aren't all streets 30 miles an hour unless a TMO designates otherwise? Because I'm not quite qualified to answer that. But yeah, it depends on the street lighting. I think it's national speed limit unless designated otherwise, depending on the street lighting. Probably dozens of you on the call going, no, that's not quite right. Right, okay. Lots of stuff about GitHub. We obviously need to make that a bit clearer. Yeah, I see what you're saying, Peter. But again, what I would say is let's get the service up and running. And then over time, we can expand it and add to it and gather more information and increase the spec. So yeah, I do understand where you're coming from, though. Right. John Harrod Booth helping out with the GitHub there, doing the Lord's work. Thank you very much, John. Right. Remarkably, we are almost exactly on time. The running order now gives us a few minutes over to John Cooper to talk about our engagement program. John.
Hi, everyone again. Yeah, we got the season of going out and talking is well and truly starting again with quick succession. In after the launch of private beta, we go to a technical webinar on the 10th of October. Then we're at Highways UK, which is a conference in Birmingham, I believe. That's on the 16th of October. And therefore, we plan to have the next main D-TRO webinar on the 21st of October. We'll be sending out invites for all of those webinars fairly soon. We follow up the October with appearance again at the TTF Autumn Conference. Some of you might have been there last year when I was there talking about the coming of the beta project and how we were doing all the prep for that. We'll be back again, and hopefully we'll be talking about how we are doing in private beta and how we're going into the assessment phase of the project. It's worth also me reminding you at this point, after this webinar, we will get the video on YouTube, the playlist, and we'll also do last week's technical webinar. Those both need to go on the TTF website. The link is in the chat to the website, and it's here on the slide. You can get to GitHub and YouTube from the TTF site. We will get pages for the new webinars on there as well. We will go through the FAQ and look again at questions that are coming up repeatedly about whether certain types of orders are in or out. Those really are policy matters that we refer to our policy colleagues to get the definitive answer on. if there's anything that remains unclear in our answers, we will try and spruce those up so that there's no ambiguity. As ever, we have our mailbox, dtro@dft.gov.uk, for any other questions you might have for us. Getting quite a lot of activity in there. There's several of us looking at it on a daily basis, and we are trying to respond as fast as we can to all your messages. If we haven't got back to you yet, drop us a reminder. It's possible that sometimes questions have slipped through the net. We're doing trying to get through it as in the best possible fashion. I think that's all of it. There will be mailing list updates. If you're on the webinar but you didn't receive a direct email from us about the webinar, somebody sent it to you, but you'd like to be on our list, drop us a line. We'll add you in. Equally well, if you no longer the person from a certain point not going to be around to work on this, we can take you off the list. I think that's all about it for further information. That's a good summary of what's coming up and how to get in touch with us.
Thank you, John Cooper. Thanks to Gareth Tilley and John Harrod Booth. I had an enjoyable time there, guys. There was some good, firm questions. Thanks to everyone who has sent us a correction or a question or whatever it might be. You're the people that kind of, toughen our thinking on this stuff and sharpen us. Team, we've got some work to do there to get back to some of these people, get some of these things updated, get information out. A huge thank you to everyone who's joined us. Hope to see you on the next webinar. Take care of yourselves and see you around.